So teachers across the country have been trying to find ways to help their students deal with the school shooting in Uvalde. Some have encouraged their classes to write letters to the families of the victims and to lawmakers, including Texas Governor Greg Abbott. That's what the fourth graders in a New York City classroom wanted to do, and their teachers, Murad and Hernandez, join us now. Ladies, thanks so much for being here. Before we get to the letters, and they have been fascinating to read through, and I will share them with the viewers, what's it been like to be in a classroom with fourth graders for these past couple of weeks? I mean, the very same age kids of the 19 who were killed in Uvalde.
As a teacher of fourth graders, hearing about this shooting, as Americans, I feel as if we're almost numb to hearing about these mass shootings. But when I got the notification that 19 fourth graders went to school and 2 teachers and then never came home, it's really an indescribable feeling. Immediately, we thought of our kids. I thought of my co-teacher and what we were going to say to them. Walking into school the next day, when we spoke to them, we saw heartbreak on their faces. And as a teacher, all we want to do is keep our kids safe and make our classroom a safe environment. And in that moment, and in the moment now, to feel like that's out of our control is making us extremely angry, disappointed, and our students felt very similarly.
And so, Carolina, how did you come up with the exercise to have them write letters?
Yeah, so, overall in our classroom in our class, we've really worked this year on striving to create a very safe environment where kids can express their emotion. And another thing that we've been working on is agency with our kids, realizing that we have power within us and that we have choice in a lot of situations. So when it came down to it, after we had that initial discussion, our kids are very sad, upset, and, just disappointed. And I just realized I don't want them to sit in despair and sit in that sadness. I want them to realize that they have agency in this moment to change the systems that have not worked to protect them. So when it came down to it, I wanted to empower them to share their thoughts and opinions and their feelings. So that's why I created that letter writing activity, so that they could identify their feelings, explain why, and also to provide solutions, because we're really big on talking about our emotions in class, but not just talking about it. It's now what are we going to do next about it? What can we do to help solve this emotion and work through it so that we can have better results later on?
So let's take a look at some of these because they're fascinating. Here's one fourth grader named Samantha just talking about her anger at basically Governor Abbott. She says, you should care about, the question was, you should care about these concerns because, and she writes, the little kids who were killed were innocent. You just didn't care and took no action. All you did was mope and be irresponsible. And then here is another kid, and he writes about the solution and what he thinks that is. And he says it is to have a special card to even enter the gun store. They also need a background check and a psychological test to even own a gun or a weapon. And I mean, it's, it's so touching to see how they try to spell these things. I mean, psychological, SICOLGICO, they're trying to express themselves. But Bess, how much help did you give them with this? I mean, how do they know who Governor Abbott is? How do they know how to express this stuff?
Yeah, I can jump in there. So, after our initial discussion and I presented this activity, we talked about, okay, they're well, why? The big question is how did this happen? Why did this happen? So we, told them about we talked about gun laws and how certain states' gun laws are a little bit more lax. And that in particular, we're in the state of Texas, where this incident happened, and also the state where I am from, I told them about how the governor has enabled for guns to be much more easily accessible. And so that was all we told them that, you know, like each state has different laws regarding this. Some people are a little bit more stricter, some people are more looser. And from there, you know, they started asking questions, right? They brainstormed their own ideas. Like, we barely did anything. All we did was we got up to the board because every 5 seconds they were like, so how do you spell capitalism? How do you spell responsibility? How do you spell psychological? How do you spell greedy? You know, they were asking how to spell things. So by the end of the first 10 minutes, we had our board marked up with all these words that they themselves came up with, and the ideas that they themselves, like, also were like churning in their brain. You know, Bess had to explain why governors couldn't be fired, because they were like, well, if he doesn't do a good job of protecting kids, like, why is he in office? And I'm like, well, you know, and then we kind of had to discuss a little bit more about, like, you know, voting and like the process of voting. And so in that regards, like, you know, we gave them the basic information, and then they just went with it.
Huh. And so, Carolina, we have 5 seconds left. Did it make them feel better, this letter writing exercise?
I think what we want to take out of this was that kids are so optimistic, and that's why they were so confused, because they were so hopeful. They were like, well, I come up with this solution, and it's so simple. So I guess our message is that if it's so simple to 9 and 10-year-olds, why is it not so simple to lawmakers? And why?
Yes, I got that too. That is really interesting that you said. When you read their letters, it does seem very simple to them, and it is logical and makes sense. But Bess and Carolina, thank you very much. We're out of time, but I really appreciate you sharing the letters with us. And we'll be right back.
Thank you.